As Link wanders the Lost Woods after saving the world, he stumbles into a completely new adventure filled with some of the strangest and most horrifying creatures, places, and stories ever seen in the franchise. For example, how can a kid's character like a Keaton come to life? What kind of shady deals does the Curiosity Shop have going on? And what is up with Tingle? The Keaton mask, a simple item that in many ways is not very special. We actually saw it in Hyrule as well, and there it is said to be a popular kid's character. And in Termina, this item appears again. It is initially worn by Kafei, who wears the mask to keep his identity hidden from the residents of Clock Town. But at some point in the Kafei and Anju questline, you receive it from the Curiosity Shop owner as Kafei leaves town. However, this time the mask is different. While in Ocarina of Time it isn't that special, in Majora's Mask it can summon a rather strange deity, Keaton. To do this, you wear the mask while cutting a bunch of rustling grass, and once summoned, he will ask you a series of questions about things seen in the game. If you answer all of them correctly, you are rewarded with a heart piece, and after that, he just disappears. Overall, a rather strange character that is actually based on Chinese and Japanese folklore. In many old tales, they are depicted as spirits possessed of magic power, which seems to be the case in Majora's Mask as well. This creature can appear out of thin air and can give Link a small power-up. But one thing that always confused me is that it's a mere kid's character in Ocarina of Time. But here, it's an actual deity of sorts. A children's mascot coming to life as a nine-tailed fox with powers beyond our comprehension. But how is this possible? Well, one answer I came up with is that the children's collective belief in this character actually made him real, or at least tangible. This is a trope that has been seen in many stories throughout history, and it's a well-regarded concept in philosophy and sociology. This being fed on the belief of the people to obtain a physical form and its godlike power. However, in the game, there's no proof for this. Nothing is explained, to be honest. But this take always made the most sense to me. And the reason why it's seen in Termina and not in Hyrule is because in the world of Majora's Mask, this character has been well known and loved for a very long time. That's at least what the Curiosity Shop owner hints at, and the Happy Mask salesman outright states. Meanwhile, in Hyrule, Keaton only became popular quite recently, according to this guard. It could be that this deity always existed, and the folklore surrounding it made it popular among kids. This fox is a bit of a trickster after all, which they must love. However, this explanation also has its issues. No stories about this creature can be found in the world, and overall in conversation, it's always alluded to be a fictional character and not one based on myths or legends. In many ways, this fox deity is a bit of an enigma, but it isn't the only mask with strange powers that we encounter, because deep in the swamp, we also come across another strange situation. Once you make your way out of Clock Town and into the first major area of the game, the swamp, you will quickly stumble upon this. A man that has been turned into a Skulltula wearing a strange mask that we have seen before. The Mask of Truth that was also seen in Ocarina of Time. When we talk to him, he says that someone told him that he could become rich by visiting this place and gave him the Mask of Truth. The person said that the instructions to become rich were written somewhere in the spider house. But as the man went in to look, he befell a curse and turned into a Skulltula-like creature. And now the only way to lift this curse is by killing all the gold Skulltulas found in this building. Overall, a rather strange situation, and the person that told him about this was clearly setting him up, but we have no idea who it was. It could have been the Skull Kid, or maybe someone in Clock Town who wanted to get rid of him, either because they disliked this person, or to steal from them after they received these riches, which is actually quite ironic. Now, the Mask of Truth itself never turns its wearer into a monster. Instead, greed is what triggered this curse. We saw a similar thing in Ocarina of Time, where a family was also cursed by the gold Skulltulas due to greed. Now, in many ways, the man was warned that this would happen before he even entered. Outside, a sign says, fearful spider house, which was most likely already there when he entered because his dog hasn't starved yet. So what exactly is going on here? Well, if you look inside of the spider house and at the gold sculptulas, we can see that they are similar to the ones seen in Ocarina of Time. But there's a difference. This building seems to be some sort of shrine or temple devoted to them, filled with murals, gold, and gems. It could even be that they originally came from here, but I think another option is even more likely. This place is nothing more than a trap made by the gold sculptulas or their followers. There's a reason why these spiders look golden. They do this to lure in victims filled with greed, so they can curse them as soon as they get close. And this whole place is filled with valuables to lure people in as well, which clearly worked on the man wearing the Mask of Truth. But if you look around the place, you can see that he wasn't the only one. Some of the eye sockets of the golden spider murals are missing gems. Clearly, others tried to steal these riches and most likely met a similar fate to the man that we met at the entrance. But what happened to them? Well, they either became full-fledged golden sculptulas themselves, or were slowly drained of their life force. The man at the entrance struggles to speak, and even says, "Hurry, please, this is awful," so he might even be in pain. It could even be that the followers of the golden sculptulas are rewarded for offering these juicy, eager, and greedy Hylians. A dark deal with magical beings that feed on one of the cardinal sins of man until there's nothing left. But one thing that doesn't make sense is that he went there with the Mask of Truth. It has no connection to the spider house. As far as we know, it remains a Sheikah artifact. And funny enough, if he actually wore it before talking to the person who gave it to him, he might have averted this crisis. So that remains a mystery. However, there are many other greedy men in Termina. There are actually many shady deals going on in Clock Town that go all the way to the top. While many in town are busy with their own errands or bickering over the potential threat the moon above them poses, some are doing the devil's work, stealing, bribing, and blackmailing to further their own goals. And a good example of this is the Curiosity Shop, a store that influences many across town. We all know that the man who runs the trading post and Curiosity Shop are the same person. Aside from looking similar, both are seen scratching a persistent itch on their back and frequently emphasize their statements. Meanwhile, the times of the Curiosity Shop opening and the trading post closing, so the part-timer can take over, line up. Even the official Nintendo Power strategy guide states that the two are the same person. So he runs both shops. Now, the trading post is a legitimate business selling a number of items like potions and arrows, while the Curiosity Shop only deals in one type of merchandise, stolen goods. We can clearly see this after Seikon steals a bomb bag from the old lady and later sells it to the Curiosity Shop owner. But all of this is just merely on the surface. There's a lot more than meets the eye. If you start asking questions around Clock Town, you will quickly notice that there's one man who knows this place, Mayor Detour. When you talk to him with the cafe mask on, after the emergency meeting abruptly ended, he will say something rather interesting. Go ask at the Curiosity Shop, the store in the west part of town that only opens at night. That guy is a bad influence on me. Clearly, the mayor knows him because he probably helped him out in a pinch when Cafe was cursed. But that most likely wasn't their first and only interaction. It's clear that the mayor isn't as innocent as many think. He has ties to the underworld of Clock Town. I mean, he even allows this shop to operate, even though many know that the dealings going on there are anything but legitimate. A guard even says this to Link if you end up disarmed. Your sword was stolen? So it's true. Lately, I've been hearing about a shady shop in town that sells stolen goods at night. This must be a result of their activities. Which is actually true, because the bird Takuri, who can be found at the entrance to Milk Road, works with the man from the Curiosity Shop. But there's even more. When he buys the stolen bomb bag from Seikon, he even uses his privileged position to blackmail the thief, saying to him, "Well, why don't I just offer you even less? And you know, this is the bomb shops. How about if I tell him all about it?" Now, he says this even though he is also guilty. Seikon even mentions this. But the shop owner deflects this with some rather poor excuses. He's certainly a corrupt man that is able to get away with more than most. He even treats you poorly if you are anything but a Hylian. However, I discovered another massive crime. He is most likely laundering his illegal money through the trading post next door, cooking the books, as one might say, funneling the money into a legitimate business's earnings to make everything look normal. Because the part-time worker says this: "We don't even get many customers, so why does the boss have so much money?" It sounds like crime does pay in this case. This man has multiple schemes going on, with both the guards and mayor being aware of it, but allowing it anyways. However, while the underworld of Clocktown is alive and well, spreading its corruption at rapid speed, there are many other strange things we have to look at. This game is filled with odd masks, and one stands out for its beyond interesting design. When venturing towards the Snowhead Mountains at night, you can sometimes hear a rather peculiar song come from above. The source of this music is a man, dancing on top of a rock, all alone. A strange sight to behold, to say the least. When we walk to the spirit, Camaro tells us that he is afraid that his dance moves will never be passed down to the new generation, and asks that Link rests his soul. So we play the Song of Healing, which encases his musical talent inside of a mask, entrusting us to spread his dance across the world. Now, aside from that, we know very little about this spirit. The only other information I could find was the reaction of the happy mask salesman, who says, "That is a fine mask. It is filled with the joy a teacher has in finding a good student." So overall, the energy surrounding this mask is positive, which is quite rare in this game. But if we look at it, we can see that it's a bit more sinister than most think. Every mask in the game seems to be made of paper, wood, feathers, and other rather normal materials. However, this isn't the case here. If we look at Camaro's mask, we can see that it seems to have some sort of leather base that looks like human skin, with the head of Camaro stitched on top of it. This was always in the game, but I've never heard anyone talk about it. And even though this is horrifying and very morbid, the mask is filled with positive energy, which is rather strange. But there are two potential reasons for it. First, it could be that it looks this way because it's the ultimate sacrifice to fulfill his dream. Instead of just offering his spirit, flesh was also required. The second reason could be related to his legacy. The other masks in the game look like normal masks, not a person. But Camaro wants his dance and maybe even image to survive the test of time. And so this doesn't look like an ordinary mask, but actually like the artist himself, even though it's pretty dark, because otherwise it could have just been a normal mask instead of a detached head. However, there's another strange mask that I want to cover that either has more impressive powers or is secretly very disappointing. In each dungeon of the game, you mostly use one transformation mask to get through it, solving puzzles and traversing the place using this new form. However, there's one exception, the Stone Tower Temple. Here we only get the transformation all the way at the end, and it can only be used inside the boss arena. As soon as you put it on, you become massive. However, given this restriction, many people wonder, does the Link grow or the world shrink? You are transported to a weird other world right before the boss fight. It is the only one that doesn't take place in a room inside of the dungeon. So does Link grow in size at all, or is something else going on? Well, if you use a glitch that allows Link to wear the giant's mask in Seikon's hideout, he will start to grow larger, and stops once he reaches the ceiling. So in the game, it does make Link bigger. But of course, the developers never intended this to be possible. It also breaks the game, requiring a reset. This is most likely why you can only use it during the Twin Mold fight. So while this is proof that Link grows instead of the world shrinking, it wasn't intended to be seen. Luckily enough, there's more evidence. The fact that Link cringes and screams when putting on the mask, like any other transformation mask, implies that he's undergoing the painful physical transformation of growing in size. So it turns a mere man into something much more. However, we have no idea how it does this. In general, this item is a mystery. The only information I could find in the game is the Happy Mask salesman's reaction. By using cheats, you can wear the mask inside the clock tower, allowing him to comment comment on it, but the only thing he says is, that truly is a rare mask. So really Nintendo gave us no clues at all when it comes to the origin of this mask. Now some would say that just like all the other transformation masks, this giant mask used to be a being. However, what kind of creature? And does that even make sense? Well, the only thing that could work is that this is a potential fifth giant. One of the beings that was locked away by Majora, but this one was turned into a mask, just like the unfortunate husk that became the Deku mask. But there are also some problems with this potential answer. This mask just alters Link's size, but he's still the same person. It's not like the Deku, Goron, or Zora masks, which causes him to take on the form of a completely new person. And even the stories that Anju's grandmother shares with you debunk it, because they only mention 4 giants. So it seems to be a magical mask that does nothing but increase your size, which is still rather painful. However, while this is impressive, there's something else in this game that could be even more powerful, even though no one expects it. So many weird concepts, items, and characters were first introduced in Majora's Mask, but the one who takes the crown is Tingle. He's the son of the Swamp Tourist Center guide and is a bit delusional, because he claims to be a reincarnation of a fairy. So yeah, anything but a normal guy. And in the beginning, when Majora's Mask came out, he wasn't too special, just a fun oddity. But as time went on and more games were released, many started to wonder what was up with this strange fairy-obsessed man, because he was starting to pop up in many different Zelda titles that were all hundreds of years apart from each other. He was even seen in Zelda's room all the way back in Skyward Sword, which was at the very beginning of the Zelda timeline. This made people wonder, has this strange man actually discovered something during his travels that made him more than just a mortal? A man that can live forever? Well, maybe. After looking into the situation further, I came to 2 possible answers. And for the first one, we need to look at a different Zelda game, The Wind Waker. Here, a story can be found in the Tower of the Gods, known as the Legend of the Fairy, which could be an explanation for why we see this strange figure so often throughout the series. It goes as follows. It is said that long ago, a boy garbed in green, known as the Hero of Time, saved this land. However, on a certain island, there's also a story of the fairy who saved that hero. It is said that the Hero of Time met the fairy in the midst of his travels. The fairy appeared before the hero, who had found himself lost in darkness. With a mystic power, it would float in midair, dancing above his head like a burst balloon. After the fairy handed the lost hero a map, it flew off as quickly as it had appeared. Better able to foresee places of danger than the hero, the fairy marked them on a map. The legend goes on to say that the quest of the Hero of Time was saved by this plump figure. Fairies live for thousands of years, but this odd fairy was a bit different. This mystical fairy was born near a lake, and when he met the hero, he was but 35. Beyond that, there's little known about that fairy. The little known legend of the fairy's 35th birthday. On one island, they celebrate one's 35th birthday with a green coat and red pants. They do this in the hopes of becoming like the legendary fairy, Tingle. Now, if this is a truly well-known legend, it could explain why we see men dressed up like Tingle in later games. These are new people being inspired by the obscure legend and probably became a bit insane just like the original. However, this doesn't explain why a plush of him is also seen in Skyward Sword, a game that was set way before the events of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. It could be that we see the same Tingle again and again because he was able to find a fairy for himself, or even a great fairy, leading to immortality. This is something people have speculated about, and even the weirdest Zelda spin-off game ever, Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land, gives a possible explanation. Here we meet a character known as Uncle Rupee, who turns out to be a demon, who gets his power from rupees. And he is responsible for the creation of Tingles, a state of being he curses people with, tricking them into becoming his slaves, also known as Tingles, by promising to bring them to Rupee Land, a paradise where nobody has to work. This is why Tingle is always busy with collecting money, so this could explain why we've always seen him throughout the history of the franchise. But I must admit, that game is not really canon. It's a spin-off title, so take it with a grain of salt. But I would say that any of these explanations could be possible. Now, those weren't the only topics topics we tackled in the Zelda universe so far. There are so many more videos on the channel, so go check them out. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you to everybody who gave me their hype points. I saw some people talk about it in comments, and I could see a legitimate uptick in that, so I highly appreciate that. Be sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss out on any future videos. Become a member today for extra perks, and in the future, member-only videos. Pretty cool. And also, be sure to join us on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for the live streams, 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central European Time.